Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to part 1 of my favourite 150 films for 2020. This came about because my alphabet of favourite film series has ended, so I thought it would be a fun exercise just to name 150 my favourite films for 2020. In about 5 or 6 weeks I've actually been doing this channel for 2 years, and obviously I've learned a lot about films from commenters and subscribers, and I have watched some films over the last couple of years that have become favourite films, mainly in part to recommendations from commenters and subscribers. So I'm hoping to do this yearly because, as you know, I have a fairly sizable backlog, so there's films that I still haven't seen, and there's obviously films that I have never heard of that I will see hopefully at some point in the next year. So it'll be kind of interesting just to see how the list evolves between years. So these aren't going to be ranked. I haven't ranked 150 because that would do my brain in completely. There will be ones that I'll probably mention as this might be in the conversation for my favourite film of all time, because there's about half a dozen films that I think are in that conversation, but I'll kind of talk about them when we get to them. So I'm just going to do 10 videos of 15 films per video. Again, I'm not going to go into huge detail of them, but this is part 1 of my favourite 150 films of 20 as of 2020. Obviously you'll disagree with some of these films, you'll agree with some of these films. Again, if you want to keep a note of your favourite 150 films, or for each video just give me 15 of your favourites, because I would be interested to hear, because that's one of the things I really enjoyed about the Alphabet of Favourite Films video series, was your suggestions and your lists. So let's start with a Billy Wilder film. There might actually be a few Billy Wilder films in this list, but this is 1951, and this is Ace in the Hole, starring Kirk Douglas. This is the Eureka Masters of Cinema, and it's spine number 82. This was also known as The Big Carnival, and you know, there's an argument that some people make of why should we watch films from the 30s and 40s and 50s, or even the silent era. You know, it's a different time. There were, you know, different views on race and gender and sex and things like that, and politics. You know, why should we still watch these films? Well, Ace in the Hole is a perfect example because it's made in 1951, but it's still relevant today because it's about the media. It's about quote unquote fake news, created news, manipulated news, manipulated, you know, the audience manipulation. It's the story of Kirk Douglas, who's been kicked out of all the big city newspapers for being too extreme. So he's in this small paper begging for a job, but he's just looking for his chance to get back into the big time, back to a big city like Chicago. So he comes across this story about a guy who's trapped down a mine. So he goes to this town, and then he realises he can take advantage of this. He can become important again. So he manipulates events, he manipulates people for his own means. Now, this is Billy Wilder at his darkest. This is Billy Wilder at his most cynical. You could argue, well, you know, you like films with likeable characters that you kind of root for, and Kirk Douglas's character is not that. It's one of those films where the protagonist and the antagonist is the same character, but Kirk Douglas is so compelling despite being completely sleazy and cynical and just attention grabbing that you do want to find out how it ends. You want to follow him as he goes on this journey, as he exploits this poor man who's trapped down a mine. It's one of Kirk Douglas's, if not Kirk Douglas's best performance, but it doesn't really get talked about as much because the film is just so dark and so cynical, even though it's shot in brilliant sunshine for most of the time. When we're not down the mine, we're in brilliant sunshine. It's a much brighter film than the actual subject matter. So I would highly recommend Ace in the Hole if you haven't seen it already. It's one of Billy Wilder's most perfect films, and he made quite a few of them. So next is Aguirre, Wrath of God by Herzog, starring Klaus Kinski. This is the BFI Steelbook. Nothing on the back. Fairly basic Steelbook. This is an incredible film. It's trance-like. It's almost like a dream. It's shot like a documentary, like you are with the conquistadors as they search for the City of Gold in South America. Klaus Kinski is just out of this world as Aguirre. It's kind of like Apocalypse Now, but 12 times better. I mean, Herzog, as usual during this period, pretty much endangered all the actors when they're on rafts fighting rapids. They're literally on rafts fighting rapids. How anybody wasn't killed is quite surprising. Obviously in Fitzcarraldo people did die during the making of that. It's such a strange film. Again, it's probably best watched late at night because it does seem like a dream. It gets to points in the film where the soldiers that follow Klaus Kinski seem to be dreaming things. As an audience, you start dreaming things. It's quite an exquisitely strange, beautiful, haunting film. Next is a Martin Scorsese film. It's my favourite Martin Scorsese film. It's nobody else's favourite Martin Scorsese film. It's The Age of Innocence. This is Criterion Spine number 913. This is a beautiful print of the film by Criterion. It's just sensational. It's a film about not getting what you want, which is something we can pretty much all identify with. It's a Scorsese film. It kind of surprised people at the time because it's a costume drama. It originally, I think, was a U certificate, but the Criterion's actually a 12 certificate in the UK. Michelle Pfeiffer has never been better. I mean, she talks about being a little bit intimidated by Scorsese and Daniel Day-Lewis, and she didn't know whether she could actually match them or work with them. But it's Michelle Pfeiffer's arguably her best performance. She looks absolutely radiant in it. Winona Ryder is actually perfectly cast as this beautiful little naive, innocent doll kind of character who isn't actually as innocent, naive as it's kind of hinted. It's got a wonderful ending, not a mainstream Hollywood ending. The production design is absolutely sumptuous. The voiceover by Joanne Woodward is wonderful. It's just an absolutely exquisite film. It's Scorsese's kind of love letter to Powell and Pressburger. There's lots of full screen bursts of colour. It's just such a beautiful film. Made in 1993, it's Scorsese's last great film. I've fallen in love with it ever since I saw it. Again, it's perhaps unusual in his canon, but it's just beautiful. And again, he cameos as a photographer, which I recently watched Hugo, and he's in that as well as a photographer. Yeah, Age of Innocence is just a beautiful, beautiful film. Next is Army of Shadows by Jean-Pierre Melville. I'm going to have to get the individual Criterion Blu-ray. This BFI Blu-ray set's fantastic, but I think Army of Shadows does deserve its own Criterion Blu-ray in my collection. It's a film that, as a younger film fan, I maybe didn't appreciate as much, but I've probably watched it about 4 or 5 times in the last couple of years, and it's just an absolute masterpiece. It's people kind of have a criticism of Melville that his films are cool and cold, but I think that's incorrect. I think some of the subjects he talks about requires a little bit of coolness and cruelness, and this is probably the most accurate depiction of the French resistance, the struggles of the French resistance within their own ranks and also with the Nazis. Melville was in the resistance for a period. It has an air of authenticity, even with that kind of stylized Melville look. It is bleak, it's grim, but it's also truthful. It's just an absolutely stunning film and well worth being on anybody's top 150. Next is a film by David Lynch. It's Blue Velvet. I probably saw this made in 1986. I probably saw that in the video shop probably in 87 or 88 whenever VHS was in video shops, and was blown away by it. This is a Criterion Blu-ray, spine number 977. It's one of Lynch's masterpieces. It's even got the most authentic depiction of a little bird. This is Dorothy Valance's room number. It's a stunning film about obviously a forerunner for Twin Peaks as far as the secrets of a small American town, because if you get under the grass it's just covered in bugs. It has one of my favourite lines in cinema history, that's a human ear alright. Even Laura Dern's police detective father seems off, because it does have one of David Lynch's strengths is the ability to make the ordinary seem extraordinary and the extraordinary seem ordinary. As with all of his films, the production design is beautiful. The sound design is amazing. The soundtrack with Roy Orbison and obviously SGS Films does constant impressions of Frank Booth, played by Dennis Hopper, in a career-defining role. It is one of the most quotable films of all time. It's certainly one of the most sweary quotable films of all time. It just has this amazing atmosphere. So behind the white picket fences there's a real darkness. It's just amazing. It's voyeuristic, even, if I can say the word. It's just a stunning film that almost 35 years later still holds up. It's still disturbing. It's still strangely funny in places, and it kind of stands as one of the beacons, one of the pillars of David Lynch's greatness. It is funny going through this top 150. Most of the films on this list are made by really good directors. It's funny that. And with that said, probably my second favourite director of all time, Black Narcissus by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, because you can't really say Michael Powell without Emmerich Pressburger. This is easily my favourite nun film. This is the Criterion Blu-ray, spine number 93. Set in the Himalayas. Never went to the Himalayas. All in the studio, apart from a little bit in a London park. Again, on paper, it's just like, why should I be watching a film about nuns in the Himalayas? It's just stunning. You can almost feel the sumptuous, lusty wind that makes the nuns plant flowers instead of vegetables, because they go crazy for David Farrar's shorts. Yeah, there's just such a... Deborah Kerr's fantastic in it. The actress who plays Sister Ruth, who my brain has just completely whiffed on, Kathleen Byron is just stunning. The scene where she taunts Deborah Kerr with lipstick is just amazing. Again, we talked about Age of Innocence with the frame being filled with colour. There's a wonderful use of that by Michael Powell and Black Narcissus. It's a stunning film. It's just amazing. It's another film about desire, thinking of what you want even though you really shouldn't be. It's just amazing. Speaking of another film that's amazing, Eileen Klimov's Come and See, which is coming to Region A Criterion, I think, at the end of this month. I have pre-ordered it, but I'm not really sure when I'll actually get it. Come and See, again, I've done a video on before, and I pretty much said your cinematic life is pretty much before you've seen Come and See and after seeing Come and See. Your view of war films as entertainment, your view of war films even as quote-unquote serious films, will be completely changed after seeing Come and See. You'll watch American war films of the 60s and 70s as just something completely different after you watch Come and See. It's, for me, it's the greatest war film of all time, because it's not about heroes, it's not about fetishizing guns and explosions that sometimes war films get caught in that trap of saying, oh, war's bad, but we kind of like guns and explosions too, and we love heroes. Come and See is the antithesis of that. You can watch it once every 10 years, but you'll still get images. You'll be able to recall images from it instantly. I mean, if you watch it, it will probably haunt your dreams for a few weeks, because there's just images that are burned in the retina of your mind's eye. It's a phenomenal film. It's not an easy watch, but it's not meant to be an easy watch. Again, war films that are easy watches probably aren't really that much worth talking about. It's a phenomenal film. Hopefully more people will see it now that it's coming to Criterion on a Blu-ray. Yeah, come and see. Phenomenal. Next on the list is Citizen X, which is an early HBO TV movie about can't remember his first name, Chikatilo, the first Russian serial killer, or the first Russian serial killer that we heard about. I mean, I remember watching the news and seeing him in court in a kind of perspex cage, which he appears at the end of this one. This is just a wonderful procedural starring Stephen Ray as the investigator, because they didn't have a department for investigating serial killers because they didn't think they existed, as Joss Ackland, who's one of the leaders of the Communist Party. He just views serial killers as a Western decadent thing. Joss Ackland gives one of the most understated performances in cinema history. Yes, I'm being sarcastic, because he just wants to arrest all the homosexuals. Obviously later in the film we realise the lady does protest a little bit too much. Donald Sutherland is wonderful as he balances, as Stephen Ray's boss, because he balances trying to help Stephen Ray out with listening to the party and following the party. Max von Sydow, as always, is just marvellous. He appears later in the film as a psychiatrist who's kind of brought on to the team to make a kind of mental profile of the killer and what he might be like. It's a pretty brutal film when you realise the number of children and young adults that this guy killed. But it's such a great procedural. Yes, once you go over the obviously lots of American and Canadian and British actors being Russian, and yes, it's because it's an HBO TV movie, it kind of looks like a TV movie, but it's just got wonderful performances apart from Joss Ackland. Jeffrey DeMunn, who plays the serial killer, gives a great performance. It's just a great wee film, and it really needs a Blu-ray release. I don't know what HBO's like for their back catalogue of releasing things on Blu-ray, but it's a stunning film. Ever since I saw it, it's just continues to blow me away. Next is a David Cronenberg film. It's Dead Ringers. This is the wonderful Scream Factory, or Shout Factory 2-disc edition, which has a bunch of commentaries. It has a bunch of commentaries, and it has like a proper aspect ratio, or the one that Cronenberg actually wants. This is the Cronenberg film that people kind of realised he might be a bit more than just the body horror guy. I think for Cronenberg fans, we kind of knew there was more going on than just horror films. Cronenberg uses science fiction and horror as metaphors, as carriers for his intellectual ideas. But Dead Ringers was the first film that kind of stepped away from the kind of body horror stuff and people inserting videotapes into themselves, for a more psychological piece. It stars Jeremy Irons in a wonderful double performance that's really subtle and the way they shot it is just wonderful before CGI. But it's never showy. It's never, you just think they're twins. It's just beautifully done. Genevieve Bujold gives a great performance as the woman in between the two twins. It's loosely based on a true story. It's just a phenomenal film. It's so elegant. But again, with Cronenberg, there's just ideas in it that are challenging and interesting, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful film. Next is a cheat, but I'm happy to admit I'm going to cheat. And the next one is Decalogue, which strictly was a television series, but I'm calling it a 10-hour film. I don't care if people disagree. It's a 10-hour film, and it's a masterpiece, and it certainly belongs in my favourite 150 films. That's the Criterion. That's the Arrow. The Arrow box set is actually better than the Criterion, I would say. It's got more extras. It's got a lot of his documentary stuff. It's got like an 82-minute interview with the wonderful Tony Raines. I should say the Decalogue is spine number 837 for Criterion. Myself and Nazarene Prod on our Ronan Nazarene Talks channel, we did a series on Decalogue, so if you're interested you should check that out. It's just a phenomenal achievement. I mean, there's a quote by Kubrick pretty much calling every one of the 10 episodes a mini masterpiece. The first episode is pretty much in those like 57, 58 minutes better than some filmmakers' entire career. It's a towering achievement. If Kieslowski had only made Decalogue, he would be one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, in my opinion. I'm biased because he's number 3 on my favourite directors. It's just a phenomenal achievement, loosely based on the Ten Commandments. I had it on Artificial Eye VHS double packs. I had it on Artificial Eye DVD. Some of the prints were really murky and dark, but both the Arrow Academy and the Criterion version, they've done an amazing job restoring it. The soundtrack by Zbigniew Preisner, who would be a common collaborator, is just beautiful. Yeah, I do get emotional when I think about Kieslowski, but I'll try and not weep on camera. Yeah, if you've never seen Decalogue, pick it up and prepare yourself for something magnificent. Next is La Diabolique by Clouseau. Again, this is a film I saw a long time ago, late night on BBC Two, no doubt, and it just blew me away. Again, this was a huge influence on Hitchcock when he did Psycho, even though it's way better than Psycho. No matter how many times I've seen this, which is quite a lot, the last 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes still get the heart rate up, even though you know what's actually going to happen. Again, it's one of Clouseau's kind of cynical, misanthropic masterpieces, about two women trying to get rid of an abusive husband and lover, set in a boarding school. The cop who turns up with his shabby raincoat was apparently an influence on Columbo. It's just a stunning film. It still impresses, it still chills to the bone, and again that ending still gets the heart rate pumping. Next is Le Yeux sans visage by Georges Franjau, or Eyes Without a Face. This is a poetic horror film, which you don't really hear the word poetic horror together. This is the wonderful BFI release. It's a stunning film by Franjau about a doctor played by Pierre Brasseur who injures his daughter in a car accident, and then gets the wonderful Alida Valli from Third Man fame and the Paradigm Case. She's his assistant, and she goes about in a little car picking up women so Pierre Brasseur can take their faces off. It's literally Face Off before John Woo, John Travolta and Nicolas Cage Face Off. It's a beautiful film. The score has that kind of carny, weird kind of atmosphere. It's really kind of hypnotic. Talked about A Year of Wrath of God being a hypnotic film. Les Yeux Sans Visage is like really hypnotic and really strange. Edith Scobe, who plays the daughter, has this kind of pristine mask that she wears. There's something angelic about her. There is actually a scene of the surgery, and you keep going, yeah, he's going to cut away, he's going to cut away, he's going to cut away. He doesn't cut away. This is 1958. This is another film that is way better than a certain Hitchcock film 2 years later. It's just a beautiful, strange, poetic, wonderful French film. Next is Flash Gordon. You knew it'd be on the list somewhere. This for me is the greatest fantasy film ever made. Better than Star Wars on every single level. Originally directed by Mike Hodges, who's really underrated, by the way. I'd like to do a series on Mike Hodges one day. Originally it was going to be Nicholas Roeg. One of the people they were talking about to play Flash was actually Kurt Russell, which would have been interesting. But I think Sam Jones fits. He is a bit of a square-jawed, empty-headed lump. But it's the people around. The production design is literally out of this world. You have Max von Sydow again. He might appear in quite a lot of these films on this top 150, our favourite 150. His Ming, he gives it all the authority he does as if it was a Bergman film. It's amazing performance by Max von Sydow. If you think, Flash Gordon has this, it's campy and it's silly and it's daft. It's a stunning portrayal of life on the planet Mongo. Peter Wingard as Clytus. You have Brian Blessed, and pretty much the only film role anybody ever remembers. Again, a wonderfully subtle Brian Blessed. Timothy Dalton as Prince Baron. Whatever happened to that guy? It's just Richard O'Brien from Rocky Horror Picture Show. Peter Duncan from British kids programme Blue Peter. Ornella Muti as Prince Aura. I mean, this is one of those PG films that you can't really watch with your parents because it's actually quite dirty. It's just a wonderful film. Topple, I even forgot about Topple as Dr. Zarkov or Arkov. It's just an amazing film. Soundtrack by Queen. It's perfect. It's simply one of the greatest films ever made. There is a 4K coming out with a huge big pack of extras and cards and postcards and everything. Obviously I pre-ordered it. Yeah, it's just one of my all-time favourite films. It's a stunning film. I mean, when you saw it on television, you realise there's actually parts cut out. Clytus's death is cut when it's on television. Timothy Dalton saying "Freeze, ya bloody bastards" is cut when it's on television. It's just a darker, more sexual film than people give it credit for. It's wonderful. Next, again, if you want to check out Ronan Nazarin Talks, the last episode that we put up, we did a career retrospective on Richard Lester, and one of my favourite Richard Lester films, arguably my favourite Richard Lester film, is strangely enough one of my favourite 150 films. and it's How I Won the War. This is a Kino Lorber Blu-ray, which was pretty much one of the first Region A Blu-rays I bought. One of the reasons I got a multi-region player, so I could actually get How I Won the War on Blu-ray. And then BFI recently released it on Region B Blu-ray. This is as Richard Lester put it, an anti-war film. It's probably about my third favourite war film. Again, we're in that territory of war films shouldn't really be favourite films, but it's just amazing. Michael Crawford, Roy Kinnear, Michael Hordern, John Lennon gives a wonderful turn. Again, like I said in our podcast, it seems scattershot, it seems chaotic, but it's actually very streamlined. It's kind of got this wonderful overarching view of World War II, the different kind of battles in different places. It has the complete stupidity of war. Michael Crawford's platoon are sent to build a cricket pitch behind enemy lines. It's just ridiculous, but again, it just makes so many excellent points. Like a lot of Lester's earlier work, a lot of people just missed the point. For years it's kind of been forgotten about, but again, through that physical media, through getting a decent Blu-ray release, because for years on DVD or VHS it was really dark and you couldn't actually see what was going on. It was really murky. But again, this is a film that's been in my life probably for 30 years, and I've loved it for 30 years. It's just an amazing film, but you might have to watch it a couple of times to get all the points and all the jokes. It's just a wonderful film. And finishing off part 1 of my favourite 150 films 2020 is Ikiru by Kurosawa. One of Kurosawa's many masterpieces. This is spine number 221. 222. 221 in Criterion. This is a Region A Blu-ray. For people who just think Kurosawa made samurai films, this is one of his best contemporary films, if not the best contemporary film. And it's about a council worker who finds out he's got cancer and decides to do something worthwhile with his life before he dies. It's that simple. It sounds like TV movie of the week kind of subject matter. One of the criticisms of Kurosawa sometimes is he's like too optimistic, or his films have like happy endings and stuff. And I think this film on the surface, where Takeshi Shimura, who gives a career best performance, and that's saying something because Takeshi Shimura is fantastic, that he does something decent, and then all his fellow workers at the funeral, when they do a flashback, because it's a film with two halves, they decide to change and they decide to do something worthwhile with their life. But of course they don't change, because people don't change, and that's kind of one of the bleak points of the film. So in the first half we see Takeshi Shimura getting his diagnosis and his prognosis, and desperately trying to clutch on to anything he can. His relationship with his son, one of the younger girls in the office, just to try and cling to life, just to try and cling to something. I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking, but it's something we can identify with, which makes it so great. So he focuses on trying to clean up a children's playground. It's just a small thing like that, but life is made of small victories, and if you can string small victories together, you might actually change a tiny little corner of the world. And the second half is his funeral, and his colleagues kind of recalling his behaviour towards the end and what happened. And then of course, with the addition of alcohol, they all vow to be better human beings, and they all vow to make changes and treat people better and make a change. And of course they don't. It goes back to them in their office and they're still punting people from section to section. Nobody's taking responsibility. Nobody's helping anybody, because that's life. It's funny with what's going on in the world with Black Lives Matter and LGBT rights. A lot of companies, a lot of people who sell things will now attach to them because that's seen as being the thing to do. It's amazing how quickly companies have pivoted to marketing themselves for people who are quarantined and locked down. How can we make money off this? And it's the same with LGBT and Black Lives Matter. There'll be a lot of companies that will put slogans and badges on their website saying we support this, we support that, but it's just another way of trying to make money. It's just another way of trying to exploit what's popular in the zeitgeist. They don't believe that, they don't support those things, but they're just seen to be supporting those things because it's popular to be seen to be supporting those things. And that's what the ending of Akira to me is about. It's about how human beings are essentially scum. It's about, oh yeah, we'll make a change. We all do it. We all say at the beginning of the year, oh yeah, we're going to be better. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to try and be this. I've done it myself. And then you just go back into your old routine because we're creatures of habit. Because I know I'm a scumbag and the rest of the world are scumbags. I think we can see that with what's going on. So on that bombshell, we're all scumbags. Thanks for watching episode 1 of my favourite 150 films of 2020. Hopefully you'll join me for episode 2. Don't be offended, I'm called you a scumbag. Everybody's a scumbag. But again, leave your comments below. Leave me your list of your favourite 150 films. Maybe 15 of your favourite films. Let's do it by episode rather than... If you want to give me a list of your 150 films, by all means. And hopefully you'll join me again for episode 2. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.